welcome to Must Have Missed It, the podcast about how James hasn't seen any movies.
2023 is going to be different, man. This is my year.
I hope so. What's that famous movie you're always quoting, the one you and your friends can't stop referencing? There's a really good chance James has never seen it.
I'd even say the chances are incredibly high.
But that's why we're here. I'm forcing James to watch a whole bunch of movies he probably should have seen already.
Hey, I'm no superhero. What do you expect?
I am Josh, and I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now. And this is my co-host.
I'm James, and don't you think about running off to doing no daring do. We've been planning this podcast for 2 months.
Regardless of what your plans are, I hope you plan to subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get them. We don't really care as long as you listen. That's what really matters. Occasionally, we'll post stuff on TikTok, so be sure to follow us there. I can't guarantee the quality of the content, but it's there. Also, we can be found on Instagram at Must Have Missed It, on Twitter at Must Have Missed It, and you can join the Discord, Must Have Missed It. James, what movie are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to be talking about The Incredibles.
It's an incredible movie. I'm happy we're covering it. What did you know about this movie going into it?
Incredibly, not a whole lot.
That's incredible.
I heard that it was pretty incredible. No. I knew it was a superhero movie. I think the most that I knew about this movie came from Funko Pops.
Yeah.
Which I sold third party for a while.
Yeah.
That's really most of my exposure to it, man. Like, I wasn't really seeking this movie out.
And the Frozone meme.
Yeah. I actually didn't realize it till I got to that point in the movie, but where is my super suit? I was like, oh yeah, that was a big meme. That's from this. That's about it, man.
So why do we pick this movie?
Oh man, it's incredible. No.
Wearing that out.
Yeah. Once a season we want to do an animated movie. We want to do a superhero movie. This kind of checks both of those boxes. So yeah.
Plus Disney Pixar, the biggest animation studios on the planet. So it makes sense that we would go for this. I'm not that surprised that you didn't catch this movie, I guess. I'd probably put it at a 3, 4 at highest on the how have you not seen this meter.
Yeah.
You were about 15 when this came out, so you're probably about the age where you're kind of moving away from animated movies and trying to act like you're a grown-up.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
what I did when I was 15. I was the most mature person on the planet.
Right.
Nobody could tell me anything. I knew everything about everything.
Yeah.
I'm a teenager. I can almost drive.
Definitely wasn't worried about this at 15.
Yeah. Last thing on your mind is an animated movie from Pixar.
Right.
I know you caught the early Pixar stuff, Toy Story, Toy Story 2.
Yep.
Finding Nemo.
Yep.
But yeah, I figured
Bug's Life. Is that Pixar?
Yeah, it's Pixar.
Yeah.
But I figured you'd probably about aged out of this, so I'm not super surprised you haven't seen it. But it's a pretty important movie, so I figured we'd cover it. It's not my favorite animated movie. It's not my favorite Pixar movie. I think it's good at all of the things that it does. I think it's best as a family movie, a story about a family coming together and overcoming their differences, that kind of thing, more than a superhero movie or an animated movie, because it's probably a top 10 superhero movie for me, but definitely not a top 10 animated movie for me all time. We've got one coming up in season 2 that I truly can't wait for, that checks most of the same boxes that this one checks.
Yeah.
We're going to do that as a timely release around the time of a sequel, if that gives you a hint of what movie I'm talking about, but we'll get there. So, The Incredibles, it began its life in 1993 when Brad Bird first sketched the superhero family that would eventually become the Pars. Bird was in the process of directing his first feature film for Warner Brothers called The Iron Giant, which is a truly amazing film, probably top 10 all-time animated movies for me, and hopefully we'll do a podcast on it someday. He was also having problems in his marriage at the time, trying to balance work with being a husband and a father. He was worried that his professional success would come at the expense of his personal life. So that stuff kind of worked itself into The Incredibles. He became increasingly focused on it after the Iron Giant lost tens of millions of dollars. It was a huge flop, did not do well at all. Bird originally wanted to make the movie in classic 2D animation and intended it to be an homage to the spy movies and comic books he enjoyed in the 60s as a kid. After it flopped, he pitched the story to his old college friend John Lasseter, who will not be mentioned again in this podcast. Sorry, not opening that can of worms, at Pixar in 2000, and Bird was convinced to make the movie in 3D animation instead. This movie was definitely a gamble for Pixar, and The Incredibles would mark a series of firsts for the studio. Brad Bird was the first solo director of any film at Pixar. He was the first outside director from outside the studio to direct a movie at Pixar. He was the first person to write a movie solo at Pixar. And this was the first Pixar movie that featured entirely human characters as the focus of the movie. You know, Toy Story had featured a few. You saw Andy and,
Sid.
Sid. Wow,
Yeah.
we were talking about this earlier.
Yep.
Shame I couldn't come up with that. But this was the first time they had featured solely human characters, so it was a very different movie than anything they had done previously. The parts were basically already sketched out in the initial story treatment. He kind of based the character powers on archetypes. So the dad in the family is always expected to be the strong one that holds everything together. So Mr. Incredible had super strength. The mom is always pulled in a million different directions. So she became Elastigirl. The teenage daughter is, shy and guarded. So those are her powers, is she could disappear and project force fields. And, the 10-year-olds are incredibly hyperactive. So Dash has super speed. And a baby could be anything. So, Jack could be, who knows? We'll see. However, some of the characters were not how they ended up in the movie eventually. For instance, Syndrome was not initially meant to be the main antagonist. In the first version of a story, he was a minor character. He attacks Helen and Bob early in the movie and blows up in their house when it gets blown up. The original big bad of this movie was called Zarek, and he was one of Helen's ex-boyfriends. His whole plan was to show her how much better she would have it with him if she had chosen him instead of Bob. So good choice to go away from that story, which just would not have been super interesting. Bird and his team decided that Syndrome would make a far better villain, and they dropped Zarek from the script. The man, the myth, the legend, Hayao Miyazaki, co-founder of Japanese animation studio Ghibli, director of such classic films as Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, and My Neighbor Totoro, stopped by Pixar during the production of The Incredibles and watched some story reels. When asked what he thought, Miyazaki said through his translator, "I think it's a very adventurous thing you were trying to do in an American film." Which, I think is about the best praise you can get from a guy like Miyazaki, who once famously said of his son's movie, "It's good that he got to make a movie. Now I think he should stop." Damn about his own son. So yeah, that's about the best you can hope for from a guy like that. The cast for this film includes Craig T. Nelson as Bob Parr, a.k.a. Mr. Incredible, former superhero stuck in a job he hates and having a midlife crisis. Holly Hunter as Helen Parr, a.k.a. Elastigirl, the glue that keeps the Parrs together, great mom, and a kick-ass superhero. Spencer Fox as Dash, the cocky 10-year-old middle child with superhuman speed. Sarah Vowell as Violet Parr, the shy eldest child of the Parr family who can generate force fields and become invisible. Samuel L. Jackson as Lucius Best, a.k.a. Frozone, Bob's best friend, a former superhero who can freeze water particles in the air. Jason Lee as Buddy Pine, a.k.a. Incrediboy, a.k.a. Syndrome, the epitome of toxic fandom, and the world's clumsiest evil genius. Elizabeth Pena as Mirage, Syndrome's second in command, a character that we know absolutely nothing about. Brad Bird stepping out of the director's chair and into the sound booth as superhero fashion icon Edna Mode. Bud Lucky as Rick Dicker, a government agent in charge of cleaning up the par's messes. Wallace Shawn, the inimitable Wallace Shawn, as Gilbert Huff, Bob's piece of shit boss at the insurance company. And John Ratzenberger as the Underminer, a literal underground supervillain who you can see face off against the Parr family in The Incredibles 2 cash grab sequel. The score for this movie is composed by Michael Giacchino, the mastermind behind the music for my favorite TV show ever, Lost. Following The Incredibles, Giacchino would go on to score several more Pixar movies, winning an Academy Award for Best Original Score with Up. Bird initially tabbed John Barry, who had composed scores for several of the early James Bond movies, to compose the music, but he wasn't interested in kind of redoing his own thing, so they went with Giacchino instead. To get a sound more authentic to the 60s, which is when the movie takes place, Giacchino recorded all of the musicians simultaneously rather than individually and recorded on analog tapes instead of recording digitally. He would actually go on to use this process for several of his later scores. The score for Incredibles was nominated for a Grammy and won several Critics Awards for Best Score. It's good, and not super memorable, but it's good. It really works for the movie. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it when I was watching, but I didn't have any complaints about it. The Incredibles was a huge test for the animators at Pixar. This is the longest movie they had ever attempted. It featured the most locations of any film they had ever attempted. It featured exclusively human characters for the first time. There were more special effects shots than they had ever attempted, and there were more textures to animate, such as hair, clothes, fire, water, smoke, than they had ever attempted. It was quite an undertaking, and Brad Bird is not the kind of guy who accepts any compromises. So his demands were very specific. He went to the heads of the studio and asked to be given all of Pixar's malcontents and black sheep, the people who had different ideas that they weren't able to try out because, they had a system and it worked. And, these were the guys that were like, but what about this thing? Yeah, this works, but maybe it could be better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what led to a lot of the success of the movie is he was able to shoot this cheaper than Finding Nemo, even though it featured more special effects and more locations and more characters and more textures. So, it's Bird being able to offer the creative freedom to take those risks is really what kind of led to the success of this film. The Incredibles premiered it in the U.S. on November 5th, 2004. It opened as the number one movie in the country and made $70.7 million in its opening weekend. That was the second highest opening ever for an animated movie at the time, behind Shrek 2, which also released in 2004. It was also the biggest opening for an animated movie in the month of November until 2019, when it was finally dethroned by Frozen 2. The Incredibles went on to make $261.4 million in the U.S. and Canada, plus another $370.1 million overseas, for a worldwide total of $631.6 million.
Jeez.
Fourth highest grossing movie of 2004, behind Shrek 2, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and Spider-Man 2. It was also well received by critics. Robert Ebert enjoyed it, giving it 3.5 out of 4 stars. It is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, for whatever that's worth, with a 97% score, and it has a Metacritic score of 90. Audiences in the theater also enjoyed the movie, giving it an A+ on CinemaScore. The Academy also liked it, nominating it for 4 Academy Awards. It lost Best Original Screenplay and Best Sound Mixing, but it won for Best Animated Feature and Best Sound Editing. Now that the fun stuff is out of the way, is this movie actually objectivist propaganda? I can see the argument. I don't personally agree with this take from the movie. I think what really sways it for me is that one of the ideas that is repeated in this movie is that if everyone is super, then no one is.
Yeah.
And kind of one of the ideas behind Ayn Rand's philosophy, objectivism, is that people who are exceptional should be given freedom to be exceptional. There should not be limitations put on these people. She doesn't come out and say that billionaires should be able to murder people, but that's what she's saying. It's a philosophy I have a lot of moral issues with. So, I mean, there were red flags in this movie that kind of, popped out at me on initial watches and rewatches. But I think what really swayed me was that the two characters that repeat the idea that is most tied to objectivist philosophy, which is if everyone is special, then no one is, are a 10-year-old and the villain of the movie. So I think that makes it clear that that's not what the message of the movie is. When it's a child and the bad guy are the two people repeating this idea in the movie, then you kind of makes it pretty obvious to me that that's not what the movie's trying to say. But take what you will. Is art what the intenders or the creators intended, or what we take from it? That's kind of the debate about art for centuries. So
yeah.
Enough about this movie, though. What is this movie about? Incredibles opens with old footage of superhero interviews, and we get our first introduction to Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Frozone. Mr. Incredible just wants the world to stop needing to be saved for a little while so we can start a family. Frozone is all the way out on knowing his Hiccup's secret identities. Elastigirl is just a little too busy saving the world to worry about starting a family right now. After the title card, we join Mr. Incredible in a tuxedo following a police chase. He got the time today, bitch. He got the time.
Hey.
He has to slam on the brakes to stop from running over an old Australian woman whose cat is stuck in a tree.
Right.
He saves Squeaker and stops the fleeing criminals at the same time, because multitasking. He hears mention of a tour bus robbery and decides to check it out. He still has time. He hops back in his car to find Incrediboy, a.k.a. Buddy, attempting to join in his crime-fighting endeavors, but he promptly ejects him, literally, with an ejector seat. Incredible tracks a criminal that I assume is the tour bus thief to the roof, and while he's talking him down, Elastigirl knocks out the criminal. Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl share a moment of extreme sexual tension. More sexual tension than like the entirety of the rest of the Disney catalog combined. Before Elastigirl leaves, mentioning a prior engagement. Frozone ice surf spy chasing a helicopter and asks Mr. Incredible if he should be getting ready. He still has time. Incredible saves a man who is attempting to commit suicide and lands in a building that is coincidentally being robbed by Bon Voyage at the same time. Incrediboy shows up again thanks to his rocket boots, and Mr. Incredible tries to make him leave. Buddy insists on trying to be helpful, but ends up causing an explosion that destroys part of an elevated train track, allowing Bon Voyage to escape. Mr. Incredible is able to stop the train in time to prevent any deaths, but he doesn't have time to go after Bon Voyage. Don't worry, they'll get him, eventually. Incredible barely makes it to his own wedding, and...
Surprise, motherfucker!
The bride is Elastigirl. Also, Frozone is his best man. We then get a newsreel montage that begins with Mr. Incredible being sued by the guy who is attempting suicide and ends with superheroes being outlawed and going into hiding. 15 years later, Mr. Incredible, a.k.a. Bob Parr, works as an insurance adjuster, and he really hates it. Elastigirl, a.k.a. Helen Parr, is a stay-at-home mom, taking care of their three kids, the shy and awkward teenager Violet, the hyperactive 10-year-old Dash, and baby Jack Jack. After denying an elderly woman's insurance claim, Bob secretly gives her the information that will get her through the insurance company's red tape and make sure her claim is covered. As she's leaving, Bob's boss, Gilbert Huff, comes into his cubicle to berate Bob for doing right by their customers before storming out again. Helen gets called by Dash's principal to come have a meeting. Dash's teacher is accusing Dash of putting thumbtacks in his chair before he sits down, and he has video evidence. Luckily, Dash is too fast for the camera, so the principal lets him go. Helen, of course, knows better and tells Dash that he can't just go using his powers recklessly. He argues that if he could play sports, he would have a better outlet for his energy. Helen won't risk exposing the family, and Dash laments that if everyone is special, then no one is. We see Violet at school watching her crush from a distance, but too scared to even be seen by him. Bob gets home from work, and in a moment of frustration, he prepares to, I don't know, like throw the car down the street or something. And before realizing that one of the neighborhood kids is watching him hold a vehicle above his head, he sets it down as the kid stares in amazement. At dinner, Helen tells Bob about Dash being sent to the principal's office, but Bob is more impressed that Dash wasn't found guilty than the fact that he was suspected. Dash starts teasing Violet about her crush, and they start fighting. Helen tries to break up the fight and asks Bob to intervene. Just as he lifts up the kitchen table, the doorbell rings, and the Pars scramble to look like a normal family eating dinner. No need to worry, though, since it's just Lucius, a.k.a. Frozone, here to pick up Bob for bowling night. After they leave, Violet laments having to pretend to be normal rather than just being like everybody else, while Dash laments not being able to wear a diaper. Lucius and Bob reminisce in the car, listening to a police scanner. Bob wants to do hero stuff, but Lucius just wants to go bowling. A mysterious woman who is identified by the captions as Mirage is watching Lucius from a distance in her car. Bob talks Lucius into going on a superhero adventure to save people from a burning building, which they do, crashing directly through a brick wall. Unfortunately, there's a jewelry store on the other side of the brick wall, and the very nervous police officer mistakes the masked superheroes for masked thieves. He pulls his gun and orders them to freeze. Lucius maliciously complies, but then takes a sip of water and literally complies, freezing the police officer, allowing them to escape before the other police officers bust into the jewelry store. I guess jewelry store, right?
Right.
Yeah, whatever it is.
I think so.
Mirage, having followed Lucius and Bob, radios her intention to switch targets, having realized that the fat guy with Lucius is actually Mr. Incredible. Bob gets home late and finds an angry Helen waiting for him. She knows he's been up to hero stuff, and they argue about exceptionalism until they realize that their kids are eavesdropping, and they all head to bed. The next day, Mr. Huff calls Bob into his office, and Huff chews Bob out for having morals. Bob notices someone getting mugged, and he tries to leave to go help him, but Huff won't let him go. Bob loses his cool, chucking Huff through several walls, severely injuring him in the process and obviously getting fired. Agent Dicker shows up and offers to relocate Bob one last time, but Bob turns it down. His family is finally settled, and, he'll figure it out. Bob goes home dejected and empties out his briefcase, where he finds an iPad. Sure. Mirage offers him a job doing hero stuff, and Bob is eager to jump at the opportunity. Bob tells Helen that he has to go out of town for a conference for the job as a cover for a superhero gig, and she believes the lie. Bob flies to Nomanisan Island. No man is an island to shut down, but not destroy, the Omnidroid, a sophisticated military robot. After a short time in the jungle, Bob encounters the robot and they fight. It goes back and forth until Mr. Incredible finally bests the robot using his brain, amazingly. Not his muscles, but his brain. Mirage and Mr. Incredible have dinner, and Mirage talks a little bit about her mysterious boss. Bob returns home happier and wealthier than he's been in a long time. He is more involved in his family's life, and his marriage is great, aside from the fact that he's still lying to his wife about losing his job. Bob notices a tear in his suit, and he goes to get it patched by its maker, the legendary Edna Mode. She agrees to fix the tear, but she insists on making him a new suit, but no capes.
No capes.
No capes. Mirage calls the Par House with Bob's next assignment, but what Helen overhears on the phone makes her start questioning Bob's honesty. Fair. Bob flies back to Nomanisan, and Mirage tells him that he'll receive his orders in the conference room. At the Par home, Helen notices the patched tear in Bob's old superhero suit and calls Edna to ask whether or not she patched the suit. Edna insists that Helen comes over. When Bob arrives in the conference room, he's immediately attacked by the upgraded Omnidroid. Syndrome makes his grand villain introduction, and Mr. Incredible is able to escape into an underground cave after Syndrome monologues for a while, where he finds the remains of Gazerbeam and the word Kronos. He's able to hide behind a dead body from the tech of Syndrome, which just proves that his tech is garbage.
Yeah.
Edna shows Helen the superhero suit she made for the entire Par family, and Helen is shocked. She can't believe that Mr. Incredible would have lied to her. Incredible infiltrates Syndrome's lair under the cover of darkness. He makes it all the way to the lava wall to the computer terminal and uses Kronos as the password. It works. Helen calls InsureCare to find out where Bob is staying on his quote-unquote retreat, and finds out that Bob was fired months ago. Meanwhile, Bob discovers that Syndrome has been testing his robot against a number of superheroes, all of whom are now dead. He searches Elastigirl's name and is relieved to learn that Syndrome does not know where she currently is. He searches for more information on the Omnidroid and is horrified by what he reads. At this moment, Helen activates a tracker on Bob's suit, setting off the defenses in Syndrome's lair. Bob attempts to escape, but is quickly overwhelmed and taken captive. Helen cries to Edna that she's losing Bob, but Edna gives her a hell of a pep talk and sends her to find Bob. Helen goes home to pack her bag, and Dash sees the suits Edna made and takes his, putting it on and giving Violet hers as well. Helen calls an old friend and borrows a jet to go to No Manazan. Helen attempts to radio the island, but gets no response, which makes her nervous enough to put on her new suit. Syndrome begins questioning Mr. Incredible to find out who he contacted, but Incredible doesn't know what Syndrome's talking about. Syndrome plays Helen's radio transmission and, realizing that Incredible knows the person on the plane, launches missiles at it. Helen emerges from the plane's restroom with her suit on to discover Dash and Violet on board. But don't worry, they called Kari to come watch Jack Jack. Helen is worried, but Kari assures her that everything will be fine. Before Helen can even respond, she's forced to take evasive action to avoid being shot down by missiles. She tells Violet to put a force field around the plane, which Violet obviously does, and everything is fine. Just kidding. Violet fails in crunch time, and Helen wraps herself around the kids as the plane is hit by the missiles. Helen is knocked momentarily unconscious in the explosion, but wakes up in time to save the kids from falling to their deaths. Mr. Incredible, assuming his family has just died, attempts to attack Syndrome, but Mirage steps in the way, preventing Syndrome from being harmed. Incredible threatens to kill Mirage, but Syndrome calls his bluff. Incredible can't actually do it. Helen and Dash combine their powers to make a speedboat, and the Pars reach the island after nightfall. They hole up in a cave, and Helen explained to the kids that shit just got real. Like, these people will kill you. They are not playing around. Helen leaves to find Bob, leaving Violet and Dash in the cave after giving Violet a short pep talk. Now it's her turn to infiltrate Syndrome's compound, which she does much more stealthily than Bob. It's rocket liftoff time, and Dash and Violet are forced out of the cave by a wall of fire. The next morning, they set off intruder alarms, and guards begin swarming their position. Mirage has a change of heart and sets Mr. Incredible free, telling him that his family survived the plane crash. Incredible gives her a hug just as Elastigirl enters the room. She punches Mirage in the face and begins berating her husband before he kisses her, and they leave to help the kids, arguing as they go. Dash runs, and Violet hides, and several guards definitely die. Just as Dash is about to get shot up, Violet finally figures out her powers and creates a force field around them, which they use to momentarily escape. They meet up with Bob and Helen, and the family teams up to take out the last of the guards. Syndrome shows up, however, and captures the entire family. He monologues his evil plan and leaves to put it into action. Violet escapes almost immediately and frees the rest of the family. With Mirage's help, they hijack a rocket and go to confront Syndrome. Syndrome has clearly overestimated his tech and underestimated his robot. The Omnidroid easily disarms Syndrome and removes him from the fight. The Pars team up with Frozone to take on the Omnidroid with their combined abilities. They're able to eventually defeat him, but Syndrome is not finished. The Pars arrive home to find him in their living room attempting to kidnap Jack Jack. Syndrome subdues the family as he begins to make his escape, but there is an unknown. Jack Jack has powers, like plural. He attacks Syndrome, and Syndrome drops him. Bob launches Helen up to catch him, and they gently parachute down. Bob chucks his car at Syndrome, who avoids it, but did not learn the crucial lesson from Edna Mode. James, what was the lesson?
No capes.
No capes.
No capes.
So he gets sucked into the jet's turbine by his cape. Good riddance. Violet finally talks to her crush and gets a date, and Dash finally gets to play sports. Everything is great until the Enderminer shows up. But that's a problem for the sequel. All right, some quotes from the notes. weird accent on the old cat lady. Like, what? Where is this woman from?
Right,
Where
right.
where does this movie take place? Municipalburg is actually, I believe, the name of the city where this movie takes place.
Oh,
I think
clever.
I have that somewhere in the notes. Yeah, I was like, Municipalburg. Yeah, okay, cool. But yeah, weird accent on the old cat lady. How did the suicide guy not die anyway? Like,
Right.
Bob was, I mean, like flying across the gap. That crash looked pretty fucking violent. There's no way that guy doesn't die anyway. LOL, bon voyage. That's just
A great pun.
so funny to me. What
Yeah.
a great pun. But don't worry, we'll get him eventually. Line is really good.
Yeah.
Exposition done well. It's really hard for me to define what makes good exposition and bad exposition, like what the difference really is. So really, to me, the difference is if I enjoyed it, it was good. And the way this movie does the exposition with the movie or the newsreel montages is really good, and I enjoy it. So it must be good exposition. The kid on the bicycle, the recurring bit on the tricycle, that's great. I really love that little bit.
Absolutely one of my favorite parts of the
Parts
movie.
of the movie,
Yeah.
Helen with the ASMR at the dinner table. Go get your money, girl. Like, record it. Get that money. Again, the city is called Municipalburg. Again, I had it in the notes. I thought I did. Incredible crashing through the brick wall with 4 people on his shoulder. Didn't he lead with the shoulder that had the 4 people on it? He's super strong, but they're just regular people. How are they not dead?
Right.
Incredible's a murderer.
There was during the fire too. Frozone and Mr. Incredible are just using the people on their shoulders as shield for the debris that's
Right.
falling.
The Rick Dicker line that someone's always in trouble. I really like that line.
Yeah,
It's a quiet line, but it really speaks to kind of part of the message of the movie, I think. The second interaction with the kid, what are you waiting for?
Something amazing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Something amazing, I guess.
Yeah.
Me Too Kid. Just the defeated voice on the Me Too
Mhm.
Kid is really good. Mr. Incredible beats the first robot with his brain, so good on him. I never look back, darling. It distracts from the great line. The other line, I think she's talking about Jack's suit and being bulletproof, and Edna says, she's like, why would he need a bulletproof suit? And she says, I'm sure I don't know, darling. Luck favors the prepared. Great line.
Yeah.
Elastigirl, when they finally hit the water, we're not going to panic. We're not going to look out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That whole sequence, like this is pretty damn dark for a kids movie, man. Just for a PG movie, like this movie really goes there with torture and the kids getting shot down in a plane. Like it's pretty extreme.
Yeah. I think the part that you mentioned earlier about the guy attempting suicide, from the jump I was like, oh, we're dealing with some heavy shit for a kids movie.
Yeah, it's definitely not it's not just a kids movie. I'll say that.
Especially him suing Mr. Incredible for ruining his
own suicide.
They doubled down on it.
Yeah. So. The line by Frozen's wife, I am your wife. I am the greatest good you were ever going to get.
Yeah.
Great line.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the final the tricycle kid interaction. That was totally wicked.
Yeah.
That's all good. What notes do you have?
You stole a lot of mine. Pretty much all the ones that you said.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of hit the same for me. There was one where after the police realized, oh, there's only one guy in there, like maybe we should go help.
Yeah.
And they all bust in and they just yell, police officers.
Is that what police officers say when they swarm a building? Because it doesn't seem like the best thing to say in that situation.
I really got a kick out of that. I think I had wrote down that the scene where Bob dents the car and the kid on the tricycle shows up and might be my favorite moment of the movie.
Yeah.
Just the expression on the kid's face. Man, that really got me. I think there were a couple payoffs in this movie that I really enjoyed, which were the no capes and then syndrome in the end. And then Frozone, the conversation he's having in the car with Bob, talking about the villain he was fighting, and he's like, he's just monologuing the whole time, and you get that with Syndrome. Yeah. You caught me monologuing. I thought that was pretty good. Mm-hmm. Frozone can't use his ice powers in the burning building because he's dehydrated, but I don't know if we see a whole lot of the other supers have issues like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's like an ED thing.
Yeah.
Trouble. So 1 out of 5, man.
Yeah. Something we can maybe get into later, but I thought that was pretty notable. But yeah, I think most of the stuff you already hit on. I mean, pretty much everything with Edna is quotable and great. So yeah, that's about all I got for right now.
Cool. You about ready for that bourbon break?
I think it's time.
Let's go then.
Do it.
And we are back. So, James, The Incredibles, how did you feel about this movie, and how did this movie make you feel?
Let me start by talking about something I hinted at earlier before the break. I think that for a PG movie, this has some really heavy adult themes.
For sure. Absolutely.
I found myself pretty surprised. You were talking about earlier how, around the age I was, that, this is not one that you were surprised that I had missed. And just made me feel like, man, how quickly did kids' movies become this heavy, this adult, this mature? Yeah. Right. I keep coming back to it. The dude that tried to commit suicide and just that whole bit being in the movie was and still is shocking to me.
Yeah.
But taking all that out of it, this is a really fun movie. I think if you try to get caught up in a lot of the dark stuff, you're not really going to enjoy the movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was charming, funny, has a lot of heart. Mm-hmm. So overall, really fun movie. Definitely took me through a bit of a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah. I think this movie does the family dynamic really well. I was mentioning earlier, I think that's what really, to me, that's the thing that succeeds most about this movie, not the superhero aspect so much, which is good, but I think it's really the family dynamic that really shines through in this movie, and you really feel the love that these characters have for each other, and it feels like a real family. The Bob and Helen have been married for at least 15 years, so their marriage isn't perfect, but no marriage is going to be at 15 years. You go through your ups and downs, and as much as any siblings can love each other, they're still going to fight, so it's very realistic. I think that was a focus for Brad Bird when he was making this movie, was every time you do something fantastical, you need to have something relatable, and every time you do something relatable, you need to have something fantastical. And I think the movie really finds a good balance between those two things.
Yep.
So does it live up to the hype for you?
Kind of. This gives me similar feelings to Harry Potter, where magic is just not my thing, and superhero movies are just not really my thing.
Yeah.
Not something I seek out. But again, this movie is more than that.
Yeah.
So, kind of left me with mixed feelings. I definitely want to watch the sequel. I'm pretty excited to watch it. Just I mean, a big part of it is Jack Jack.
Yeah.
I gotta see, where that goes, and just kind of leave you hanging at the end there. But it kind of left me on the fence. Like I think going into the movie, I expected to enjoy it more than I actually ended up enjoying it.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a letdown, but it wasn't like, oh man, why'd you make me watch this?
Right.
The rewatch was fine. I had no issues getting through it, but I don't think it was one of those that blew me away in any aspect.
Right. It's not E.T.
Yeah. It's not E.T. It's not
Right.
Die Hard.
Right.
It's not one that I was like, damn, how did I really not watch this?
Yeah. Like I said, so I put it at 3, 4. Have you not seen this meter? Like I said, it wasn't a movie that I really thought you would have sought out.
Yeah.
Knowing your taste in movies, so it doesn't surprise me. It's not really your cup of tea. I was kind of hoping that like I said, the familial element of this movie would kind of carry it. The heart of this movie would carry it more than the superhero aspect of this movie.
Yeah, and
which I'll talk about a little more when we get into award season later. It's one of the things that works the least for me in this movie, unfortunately.
The superhero?
The superhero, the superhero aspect.
Yeah.
Just my least favorite scene is a very superhero-esque scene, which, like I said, we'll discuss later.
Yeah.
In terms of music and movie magic, what stood out in terms of sound design or visuals or score in this movie for you?
I think the music was really well done. I think everything was kind of appropriate where it was placed.
Mm-hmm.
Did a really good job of kind of telling you how you should feel in the moment.
Yeah.
The recurring motif, the Incredibles anthem, if you will, comes up a lot, comes up in different ways. I especially liked where Mr. Incredible is coming back from one of his outings and just humming it as he is taking the snacks in the kitchen. Also, that motif in general reminded me a lot of one of my favorite video games, Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
Just very similar in sound to that. So I enjoyed it. But yeah, I think the music accompanies all the scenes really well. There's something about the movie and the way it looks that I wanted to kind of touch on, and that's that I think there are a lot of shots in this movie. I think most of the shots in this movie are very character focused, and they're very tight.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are so many scenes in this movie that you're just getting the character that's being focused on in that moment. You're not getting a whole lot of background. And it gave me kind of video game cutscene feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the scenes when I was watching it. But then so specifically the scene where Dash is running from all the bad guys on the island.
Jungle Dash.
Yeah, Jungle Dash. And you're getting all these close-ups on Dash, and it's fine. But then it opens up where he comes out to like a beach-looking area, and you just get all the background, and you see Dash really small running away, and like, give me more of that.
Right.
Not saying that the rest of the movie was bad because of the tight shots, but as you were mentioning before, this is the first time they attempted all human characters and that kind of thing. So I guess I forgive them. Yeah. But the I don't know, the tight shots and the super zoomed in feeling shots were kind of bothersome for me.
Yeah. But I feel you. I think the visuals in this movie are kind of the thing that holds it back in terms of music and movie magic. It's really weird to watch this movie and then go and watch Incredibles 2, because it literally takes place from the moment that Incredibles ends in terms of story, but it's 14 years or so later when Incredibles 2 came out. So the leap forward that they've made in terms of visual quality is very obvious. Also, a couple of the voices, it's Holly Hunter especially. It's pretty obvious that 14 years have passed since the first movie was made.
Yeah,
That's a little distracting. But yeah, the visuals in this movie they're fine. You know, again, you have to take into account when it was made and you know, like we talked about the fact that this was the first time they had done all human characters as the focus of the movie. So yeah, they had, you know, there were some limitations and some challenges, and I think it shows, you know, now in 2022. Well, I'm sorry, 2023. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
We are behind 2023 now. Jeez, time flies. But yeah, I mean, it's not the most visually appealing movie. Some of the backgrounds are, you know, a little muted or understated, or not even understated, just kind of basic.
Yeah.
A lot of the visuals in this movie are kind of basic. But again, 18, 19 years ago when this movie came out, so I try to be lenient as far as that goes.
Right.
Was there anything in this movie that didn't work for you?
Yeah. I'm gonna harp on it. The suicide attempt little arc.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could have found a different way.
Yeah.
I think we could have found something else that could have happened to Mr. Incredible for him to get sued, and it just felt really intentional to put it in there for me.
Yeah, I think my issue with it really is that if you're going to do that arc, why do it twice? Because that's essentially what they did. Because not only did the suicide guy sue Mr. Incredible, but also the train survivor sued him too. So you can do that same storyline without the suicide guy and just have the train survivor sue him, and it's the same story. It doesn't change anything. It just kind of takes out that the mental health stigma kind of issue I have with the storyline. So yeah, I definitely agree. I agree there. Was there anything else that didn't work for you?
Yeah, and it's kind of, maybe these are picky, but it is what it is. The self-destructing tablet after the message to Mr. Incredible, I was like, that's not necessary. That's just a gag they threw in. I don't know why it bugged me as much as it did, but it did. I was like, you're trying to be inconspicuous.
It's a Mission Impossible reference.
Oh, okay. Is it like a Brad Bird thing?
No, it's just again, you know, this was inspired by the TV shows and the comic books they'd read in the 60s, and Mission Impossible was a show in the 60s, and that was one of the aspects of the show was the mission that you were given would self-destruct after you read it. So yeah.
Okay, so that was just a missed reference. There's I want to leave that for award season actually. Not a whole lot, man. The things that I have left really that didn't work for me are definitely more appropriate for awards season, but like I'd be getting really picky. Yeah. You can pick this movie apart. Don't get me wrong. There are things that like if you want to, but that's not how I want to watch this movie.
Right.
One weird thing that I caught on my rewatch that I definitely did not see the first time, and it just clicked when I was watching it. I was like, that's kind of strange. When Mr. Incredible goes to his wedding, the first interaction he has is with Lucius, and he's like, hey, you still got the mask on. Right. But when you see all the guests at the wedding, they're like half of them are in their super suits.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
What?
But I mean, I don't know.
Like, it's a private ceremony, but like, if he was so concerned about
how do all these people like? Why are people that are just family members or friends of Bob and Helen like not like? Wait, why is Gazer Beam here?
Yeah. But again, that's admittedly picky And I'm not saying it's something that didn't work. It's just something that on my second watch I was like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, especially because Lucius has the line that he doesn't hang out with anybody from back in the day
Yeah.
except
I didn't
Bob.
even think
So
about that.
It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like everybody's super chummy after all these years or
Yeah.
anything like that. So it's kind of weird that all those people would have been at his wedding. But yeah, also even more weird that they would have been at his wedding and people wouldn't have been like, wait, why are all these superheroes here?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about before award season?
I don't think so.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we will be back for award season with a special guest.
Ooh.
Teaser. And we're back for award season with a special guest. This is my daughter, Anya. Anya, introduce yourself.
Hi.
Quite the introduction. She decided that she wanted to be part of the podcast, so we invited her on for Incredibles. It's a movie that she enjoys. She prefers the second one, but we brought her on for the first one because we're not going to do the second one. So here we are. Anya, we're going to give out our awards, and we're going to start with favorite scene. So who wants to go first?
You want to go first or you want me to take it?
You.
All right. So my favorite scene was tough for me to pick. I had two choices, and I'm gonna save my runner-up in case one of you use it. But I decided on the scene where Helen gives Violet her mask and gives her the pep talk about confidence and doubt, and kind of lets her know that, hey, you can do this, and when the time comes, you're going to know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
I felt that was the most crucial moment in Violet's character development, and it also was one of the two scenes in this movie that really pulled on the emotional strings.
Yeah.
If neither of you have my runner-up, I do want to mention it, but I want to save it. So for me, it was that.
Anya, what was your favorite scene in this movie?
My favorite scene was when Violet says like everything is normal, and then like baby Jack just laughs.
So the scene where she's talking about the only person in the family that's normal is Jack, and he's not even potty trained. Is that the one you're talking about, where they're eating dinner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty
good.
funny scene. Why do you like that scene?
Well, because it's funny.
Yeah. That's a good enough reason.
I'll take it.
So my favorite scene in this movie, I'm not gonna lie, I think objectively it's the best scene in the movie. It's the plane sequence. Just harrowing. I watched a video recently about The Incredibles, and it was weird because I've seen this movie a few times, and I don't know that I ever really emotionally invested myself in this scene to the level that I did on my most recent rewatch. And the video was talking about how when he rewatched it, he was on the verge of tears, and that had never happened to me until I saw that video.
Yeah.
And then I rewatched it, and I was on the verge of tears.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's so weird how that can happen. But that is just the most harrowing sequence. I just can't imagine having to, one, try to be in a position where you have to protect your children in that scenario. And not only that, but you're asking your children to protect you. I can't imagine asking that of Anya. And, that's what makes the scene that you reference so powerful, is that it comes after this scene where Helen asks basically the impossible of Violet, and she's unable to do it.
Yeah.
Which is what you would expect, of a teenager that has, some confidence issues. And so this scene right here is really, to me, the most emotional scene in the movie.
So my runner-up is going to be, and I guess the reason I didn't pick it is because I feel like it was such a quick moment. But I think it's during the end scene fight, but it's just a quick moment that Helen and Bob have, where he's like, I can't lose you again.
Yeah.
I'm not strong enough.
Strong enough, yeah.
And she just kisses him and, tells him, you don't have to be,
Right.
because us together can get it done.
Enough, yeah.
And I really wanted to pick that scene because it really reminded me a lot of conversations I've had and moments I've had with my wife,
Yeah.
where one of us just has to pick the other one up.
Yeah.
And you know, even moments with you and I, you know,
Right.
where you just sometimes there's that one person in the relationship that has to be stronger for the other one, and you know, you two together can do it. And
Right.
just that feeling of togetherness, that was the other moment that got me in the movie.
Yeah.
So I felt it was worth a mention.
Least favorite scene. Who wants to go first?
I think you should go first, Anya.
Anya, it's your
I went
turn.
first last time.
My least favorite scene is when, like, Tony comes out of class and Violet sees him and she just can't talk to him
Yeah.
because she's too embarrassed and she doesn't have enough confidence.
Yeah. Why is that your least favorite scene?
Because she like mumbles and she doesn't have enough confidence and she just stands there awkwardly.
Yeah. So you feel bad for Violet in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. James, what's your least favorite scene?
This one was hard for me. It was hard because I couldn't decide if the direction of the scene was intentional or not. So I'll need a little bit of help. But it's the scene where Mirage is briefing Mr. Incredible on the mission. About the, what is it, Omnitron? Omnidroid, yeah. And it's specifically with the line delivery where she's like, we've lost all control and now it's loose in the jungle threatening our facility. And she just kind of like casually throws her arm up and almost rolls her eyes. And to me, it came off as like, I don't believe you for 1 second. Like,
Right.
This is absolutely a setup. And that's why it was hard for me because, I mean, we know it's a setup. She's in the car and she's like, this is the one that they're looking for before they even bring him to the facility. But I felt like just that scene in particular and the line delivery and the voice acting was like, are they intentional? Like, are they not giving the audience enough credit here?
Yeah.
By being this obvious about it, or is this really bad acting?
Yeah.
And I couldn't really decide, and I didn't like the scene anyway, so
Right.
I went with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is Mr. Incredible is just so eager to believe whatever allows him to do the thing that he wants to do that he doesn't notice any of those kinds of things. My least favorite scene we've actually already referenced. There's a reason that I was so quickly able to come up with a name to this scene when you mentioned it earlier. My least favorite scene in this movie is the Jungle Dash scene. It just doesn't do it for me. I mean, like I said, the superhero stuff in this movie is fine. You know, it's not my favorite part of the movie. I really enjoy the Dash character, so it's disappointing to say this is my least favorite scene in the movie. But in terms of like the action set pieces, I think this is the one that does it the least for me. It's really just repetitive. I think it's just kind of the same thing over and over again. And it's a little overly long, and I just didn't need that long set piece there in the movie. It just didn't do it for me.
I agree with you. I do want to highlight one little spot from that scene, though, that just absolutely tickled me. And it's where he realizes he can run on water.
Yeah.
And he just lets out that little, like, just, how much better can this get? You know, that was great.
I also enjoy where he goes flying off when it may be the first of the guards that definitely dies. Crashes into the cliff. He goes flying off and grabs the vine and barely stops himself from hitting the ground. He's like, I'm alive. Like, that's so good. That part was really good, and the part you mentioned was pretty good. But overall, the scene just didn't really do it for me. Favorite character, Anya. Who's your favorite character in this movie?
Violet.
Violet? Why do you like Violet so much?
Because her confidence boosts so much in this movie
Yeah.
from the
So
beginning to the end.
you like her character arc? Yeah, I think Violet has one of the best character arcs in this movie, so I definitely can't disagree with that choice. Anything else you want to add about Violet?
Mm. Mm-mm.
No? Okay. James, who's your favorite character in this movie?
Well, my favorite character in this movie is also Violet.
Nice.
My favorite character, or the reason she's my favorite character, is also kind of the same reason you chose. I think she has one of the most interesting character arcs in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the glow up from her being this timid, a wallflower, and what she grows into and how confident she is, how she digs down deep and really does find that she's capable of really being one of the most valuable family members. I mean, she saves them a couple times. But there's another character arc in this movie that I think contends with it. I won't bring it up now, but personally for me, I really enjoyed watching what she turned into. Her, just moving her hair off of the eye was a great visual representation of her confidence boost. And I shout out to Dash, honorable mention. Sorry if that's yours. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I don't think that would be yours. We'll see. But there was also a part of me that really liked Dash because as a kid I was kind of this hyperactive, everyone telling me to kind of hold back. I was always the first to hand in my test, the first to answer a question, like always wanted to be the best at everything. And I was very often told to just kind of slow it down. So I identified a lot with Dash for sure.
My favorite character in The Incredibles is Helen. I think that she I don't think that surprises anybody.
I almost picked her. I almost picked her.
It's kind of probably the chalk Josh pick on this movie. Again, the glue that holds the Parr family together. Without her, I just don't know how this family would even manage. Just the most grounded character in the movie. I think the most realistic in terms of her outlook on life. But yeah, just a very well-rounded character, very relatable, just someone I identified with a lot.
Yeah, she was actually pretty high on my list when I was trying to decide on this, and I couldn't really quite put it into words, but that's how I feel about Helen as well.
So let's be a little negative and go with least favorite character. Anya, who's your least favorite character in this movie?
Buddy.
Buddy? Yeah, I don't blame you.
Good choice.
Why? What's your issue with Buddy?
I feel like he has a lot more to give. Like he could be a worse supervillain.
Yeah.
Like he can do more than he can do.
So you think he should be more evil? That's why you don't like him? Or you think he should be more good, and that's why you don't like him?
Kind of both.
Kind of both? He could be one or the other, and you would be a better character?
I just feel like... yeah.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
James, who's your least favorite character?
It's Mirage. But hear me out. Because it's not the character, really. It's how they chose to use the character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like they really gave any consideration to fleshing this character out.
Right.
She was a tool to get Mr. Incredible to the island,
right.
And she was I mean, that's all she was. She was literally a middleman between Syndrome and Mr. Incredible.
Yeah.
and that was it.
Yep.
It even when it felt like they were starting to flesh her character out a little bit, they never did anything with it.
Yeah.
So again, it's nothing personal against Mirage. She's fine. It's just I feel like you need this character to progress the story, but like you're not even gonna put in the effort to really delve into them.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit, but not really a lot. So yeah.
I'm gonna swerve left here. I'm gonna go with also Mirage. Just like James said, we know absolutely nothing about her. She has an arc, but we don't understand her arc.
Yeah.
She goes from being the villain's girlfriend, henchman, second in command or whatever
Right.
her role is to helping the Pars, but we don't know why. We know absolutely nothing about this character, who she is, where she comes from, what she wants. Why is she in this movie?
Yeah.
I don't understand it. It's she is pointless.
Yep.
And it's just like Die Hard, when I was like with Thornburg, I'm like, there's no need for her to be in this movie.
Yeah.
You could have Syndrome just be the person that interacts with Bob, and it's the same fucking movie. So
Right.
yeah, I have a lot of issues with the Mirage character, who, you know, in terms of the character aesthetic, and like, I want to like the character, but because I don't know anything about her, it's really hard to care about her at all.
That's exactly how I feel. Yep.
Now we'll get into performances. So, Anya, who was your favorite performance in this movie?
Edna.
So Brad Bird as Edna Mode.
Edna.
Did you know that was the director of the movie that played Edna Mode in this movie? Yeah, that's the director of the movie that plays her. What'd you like about Edna?
Well, she was she doesn't really care what anyone thinks about
Nope.
her.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Nope, she does not care at all.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
James, what was your favorite performance in this movie?
Anya, this is getting pretty weird. I also chose Edna.
Brad Bird.
I think that a lot of the performances in this movie are solid.
Yeah. I don't think there are many bad performances in this movie.
Yeah, and I considered picking one of the main family members because I really do think they all really knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
Especially with how you were talking about how the character arcs were planned. I think they all do a great job of representing those arcs. But Brad Bird kills this performance with Edna.
It's very fun.
It's so fun. My wife actually, she was like nagging me to look up the IMDb to see who spoke for Edna because that's her favorite character in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked and pleasantly surprised to see that it was Brad Bird. So, I just couldn't get off of it. Again, I think all of the voice acting performances are pretty solid aside from, a couple moments here and there. But, man, what a fun character. He just had a blast doing this,
for sure. Yeah.
It was great. How about yours?
As you said, I don't think there's really any bad performance from a central character in this movie.
Yeah.
Or even most of the secondary characters in this movie. So I really want to highlight what I think is an especially impressive performance, considering a couple of factors. My favorite performance in this movie is Spencer Fox's Dash, who just perfectly embodies the character. I don't think there's an actor in this movie that is more completely believable in their role than Spencer Fox.
Oh, he goes for it.
The little the I'm alive line when he slides down the vine, but really we're dead. We survived, but we're dead. The delivery on that line is so fucking funny, man.
It's one of my favorite
It
parts.
is one of the funniest lines in this entire movie, and I absolutely love it. And I think for a kid that was 9 or 10 years old to do this performance, like, this is not a professional voice actor. This is a 9 or 10-year-old kid doing this role, and it blows me away that they were able to keep up with Holly Hunter, Oscar-nominated actress, Craig T. Nelson, who's been doing this a really long time, Wallace Shawn, all these actors that you're very familiar with and you've seen in a million roles, and Spencer Fox, like, just as good as anybody in this movie. So my award goes to him.
Had I done my homework on that movie and known his age, that might have been my choice.
Again, for a 9-10-year-old, it's a fantastic performance.
Also, I really love the moment when they're in the limo on the way home, and he's like, "That was so sweet the way you blah blah," and he's like, "I love this family."
I love this family.
He is great.
Least favorite performance, James. Who is your least favorite performance?
So this is going to be similar to 28 Days Later.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we both chose Hannah. I know one of us chose Hannah.
We both chose Hannah.
Yeah, and it was one specific line.
One scene.
Yeah. So it's going to be Jason Lee. I don't think this comes as a surprise to you because we referenced this line a few times, but the really off-putting random ass country accent that he throws on the
inexplicable. I don't know.
Yeah, this is just too good. Like,
he forgot which thing he was filming at the time. He was going back and forth between this and Earl, I guess, and he was like, which set am I on today?
Right. Definitely Earl. And there were a couple other lines that they felt really experimental.
Yeah.
Where he was like, whether it was the direction or not, I don't know, but it just seemed like he was like, I'm going to try this line this way.
Yeah.
And it just got left in for whatever reason. But so I don't want to say that without saying that other than those few moments, I really think Jason Lee did a great job.
Yeah, I think he's solid in this movie.
I mean, he definitely makes you dislike the character.
Oh, yeah, he's solid.
So I don't want to say that I think his performance as a whole was bad. I actually liked it.
Yeah.
I just think that there were, again, a lot of solid performances in this movie, so I have to find it where I can.
Yeah.
And there are definitely spots where I'm like, come on, man, like let's do another take.
Anya, who do you have for least favorite performance?
I had Buddy, but after what all of y'all said about Mirage, I feel like it would be the person who plays Mirage.
I don't know. Really? I think she does a good job. I just don't think she has much to work with. And it's more the problem with that performance is just there's not a lot to go on.
So why did you originally pick Buddy?
It's the same thing what I said about how I feel he's my least favorite character.
Yeah. So you just don't like the guy that plays him? Yeah.
No. I just feel like he has more to give.
Yeah, in terms of performance. I think I'm going to. It's kind of a cop out. I think most of the performances in this movie are really solid. I don't think there's what would be considered a primary character in this movie that does a bad job. Even the secondary characters are pretty standout for the most part. So I'm going to go with the one performance that really just kind of took me out of this movie, and that's the old cat lady. I don't understand the choice to give her that accent is just a really weird choice. It's disorienting for me, and I don't care for it. And old cat lady can go. Put like literally put a robot voice in there, it would be better. I just don't understand the choice to go with that specific accent
Squeaker.
in this town. It's just very strange. So Old Cat Lady gets the least favorite performance award for me.
All right. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, again, kind of a cop out, but I mean, I got to be who I am. So, so now we're to coolest hang. Anya, who do you have for coolest hang?
Violet,
Violet. I'm not surprised. Why is Violet your coolest hang?
because maybe if you hang out with her, she could give you lessons about confidence.
Yeah, definitely. She's learned a lot about it, so she definitely probably has a lot to teach. James, who's your coolest hang in this movie?
It's Edna.
Edna.
Look, I know she's a lot. Like, she's a lot.
Yeah.
But dude, she's got all the tea.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to Edna's house, you're about to find out about everybody and she just strikes me as that person, man. And like, I don't think you're ever going to be bored hanging out with Edna, man.
Yeah.
Like, I hesitate because, again, she's a lot. Like, she's intense.
Yeah.
But there's just something about her, man. Like I could kick it with Edna. We can drink whatever, talk about whatever. She's gonna be a good time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Everybody's looking at me. Is it my turn? For coolest thing, I have Lucius. I feel like it's kind of the chalk answer for this movie.
I considered Lucius.
Yeah. I don't think I put a whole lot of thought into this category, really. I like Violet's arc as a character. I don't think we would have a lot of fun hanging out.
Yeah.
Even if I was 10 years old, I don't think I'd be able to put up with Dash for an especially long time.
Oh, yeah.
Bob honestly kind of sucks. I guess I could probably hang out with Helen for a little while. I'm not sure what we would talk about, but whatever. But Lucius just seems like a really chill dude, good friend to Bob. So I would assume that we would have a good relationship based off of that. And just seems like a nice guy to go bowling with.
Yeah.
Toughest
Bowling.
hang. Yeah. No, we would actually go bowling.
Oh.
Lucius would like having me around because we would
Right.
actually go bowling. Toughest hang. Who do you have as toughest hang on you?
I disagree with James. I chose Edna.
Okay.
As
Okay.
toughest hang? Yeah, I'm more in line with your thoughts there. Honestly, I don't think I could hang out with Edna for very long.
I thought of this because of when Helen goes over to Edna's house. She just keeps talking over her. And just keeps pushing her to see all the stuff all the suits she made.
Yeah. Yeah, and it definitely wants to dominate the conversation for
And
sure.
she kind of wants all the attention.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah. And again, she's a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I just got this feeling it'd be a good time.
James, who's your toughest hang in The Incredibles?
Oh, easiest answer, probably first answer that I came up with. It's Huff.
Yeah. Huff sucks for sure.
We've all had a boss like this. Anya, you're fortunate that you don't work yet and you haven't experienced this, but we've all had a boss like Huff. Obviously, he's exaggerated because it's a cartoon. But man, I mean, do you want to put this guy through a wall? And we get it, and it's great. But this gives me similar feelings to what's his name from Avatar?
Quaritch.
Not
No,
Quaritch.
Selfridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gave me similar vibes to Selfridge. He's singularly focused.
Yeah. I'm so disappointed in myself that I actually remembered that name from Avatar.
Selfridge. Unobtainium. Okay, no, wrong podcast.
Wrong podcast.
But yeah, it's tough. He's terrible. He sucks.
He sucks. Yeah, I don't think I spent much time with him either. But my toughest thing in this movie is not Huff. It is Kari. Oh, my God. Nope. All the way out on Kari. There's no fucking way. I have 4 employees that are Kari right now, and I'll let y'all figure out who you are. But there's no way. Kari is the toughest thing in this movie. I'm not going to go into detail on why it is. I think it's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Just based off the barrage of messages she leaves Helen at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
No fucking way.
Your baby has special needs.
So for, I think, the 3rd podcast in a row, at least the 2nd, we are going to skip Top Bop. We have decided to discuss superpowers instead because that's way more fun than songs.
Yeah.
There's plenty of songs. There's only so many superpowers. So in terms of this movie, if you could have one superpower from this movie, Anya, if you could have the powers of one character from this movie, who would it be?
Frostbites.
Frozone?
Yeah.
Frostbites. Close enough. Why would you want Frozone's power?
Because I like how he can freeze water.
Yeah. Well, you love snow, so that doesn't surprise me that you would choose Frozone. James, whose power set would you choose?
I think that I would want Violet's powers. I think for me personally, there's an extremely large amount of value in being able to just disappear when I would like to.
Yeah.
The force field is really just an added bonus. It's really the being able to disappear.
Yeah.
The suit would be a great addition. Cause I found it kind of weird. It's just her head that disappears.
Her body, like her clothes, she can't.
It's just a clothes. Okay.
She can't make her clothes disappear. She can make the entirety of her body disappear, but not what she's wearing.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, but that's it for me. Just being able to not only use it as a hiding technique, but who wouldn't want to be invisible? Like, that's cool as shit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I also went with Violet. I have a couple of moral issues with the invisibility aspect of her powers, in terms of what that allows one to do, from a moral stance.
Yeah.
But I can't disagree with the idea that it'd be really nice to just be able to not be seen for a little while, to just fade into the background for a little while.
That's really the appeal.
Yeah. But I'm a pretty guarded person, so I appreciate the shield. I think that's a useful aspect. I'm also a personal space person, and the ability to physically dictate my own personal space. I mean, that's very appealing to me. Nope, I will force you to socially distance. Thanks anyway. You will stay at least 6 feet away from me at all times. So yeah, it's definitely Violet in terms of which character's superpowers I'd want in this movie. But if you could have any superpower, not from the movie, but any superpower, what would y'all choose? What's yours, Anya?
Telekinesis.
Telekinesis. What's telekinesis?
Where you can move objects with your mind.
I would love if you had telekinesis, because I would never have to get you glasses of water ever again. You can get it for yourself from wherever you are. Why do you want telekinesis?
I don't know. It just seems cool, like after watching Stranger Things.
Yeah.
11.
You just want to be 11. I get it. James, what power would you choose?
So for a really long time, I've always thought it'd be really cool to be able to live forever, which is also an extremely frightening thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't choose that.
Yeah, I have no interest in that.
I instead went with teleportation.
Nice.
Because that is the next most desirable thing for me when I think about superpowers, is to be able to just be wherever I want when I want.
Quickly get away.
Yeah. Not only do you create more time for yourself, which we've discussed multiple times, is we wish we could bottle time and sell it, right? So yeah, I think that to me is the next best thing to being immortal, because being immortal, like the appeal of it to me is you just get to see so much.
Right.
You get to see what things become. The scary part is it just never ends.
For me, the scary part is also the thing that you just said. You get to see what things become.
Yeah.
So that's equally as exciting and frightening for me personally. So it just depends on how you feel about stuff like that.
Yeah. And so I had to move off of that. It's just it's a whole rabbit hole of just fear.
Yeah.
So teleportation, man. Yeah. I mean, just like, we finished this podcast and then I'm home. You know what I mean?
Pretty
like
good.
How easy was that?
Yeah.
Also, not a big fan of driving.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of travel. So yeah, that just cuts all that out and I can just be where I want.
Yeah. Immortality that's a hard pass for me. Invulnerability, that would be pretty cool. Not even necessarily for the getting hurt thing, more for the staying healthy thing.
Yeah.
Not having to worry about, getting the flu and things like that. That'd be great. That'd be
Right.
so awesome to just be able to eat whatever you want, regardless of how many hours it's just been sitting on the counter. You're like that. I don't care if it's been out there for 9 hours. It looks delicious and I'm going to eat it.
Right.
And then you just get to do that and you're fine. So that sounds pretty awesome. But I also went with telekinesis. I consider telepathy, but again, the moral implications of telepathy, I don't think I could be responsible with telepathy, whether it's putting thoughts in other people's heads or reading their thoughts. I don't trust myself with that kind of power, so I'm going to avoid it. But yeah, telekinesis would be dope, to be able to just start my car from inside with without the technology in my car that will actually allow that to happen. Just stuff like that. Just it would allow me to be so much lazier than I currently am, which would just be great because I would really appreciate the opportunity to be lazy sometimes. We have reached best fit. James, what's your best fit in The Incredibles?
Whole lot of Violet here. But I'm going to go with Violet's super suit.
Yeah.
And really, for me, it comes down to what we talked about earlier, and that's the cloaking feature of her suit.
Mm-hmm.
When I was thinking about best fit, I really had an issue. And then I decided, well, there's some specific outfits that have a function. So I chose the one that I liked the most out of the Incredible suits.
Yeah.
Really nothing more than that.
Gotcha. Anya, what do you have for best fit?
I chose Mirage.
Raj, the power skirt, the suit skirt combination.
No, 'cause when they go out for that dinner and she has that like blue dress,
Oh yeah,
I really like that dress.
that's a good dress.
Great dress.
Yeah, I guess for best fit, I'm just going to be cheap and I'm going to choose the par suits in general across the board. I assume most of them have the same features. You see Jack's suit with the bulletproof, fireproof.
No helmet, though.
Yeah, not going to really stop anything above the neck. So that's not ideal. But I don't know. I mean, Elastigirl, Helen, saves her family by surrounding them with herself, and they all survive an explosion on the jet they're on, which I guess is pretty much just her super suit protecting everybody. So
Right.
They seem pretty sturdy. I wouldn't mind one of those. Weirdest category of the podcast. We're at the John C. Reilly category. So if you could replace anybody in this movie with John C. Reilly, who would you replace Anya?
Mr. Incredible.
Mr. Incredible. I would go see that movie. Why Mr. Incredible?
Because I feel like, When I think of John C. Riley, I think of Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
And Wreck-It Ralph is like strong.
Yeah.
He has tons of muscles, and so does Mr. Incredible.
Yeah, they basically have the same body shape. I think Wreck-It Ralph has much bigger feet than Mr. Incredible, but otherwise, same body shape. I can see that. James, who do you have?
This just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Yeah, I chose Mr. Incredible as well. This one, I feel like I'd say this was every award. It was hard for me. There were a lot of characters in this movie or actors in this movie that I didn't want to replace.
Right.
And Craig T. Nelson was one of them. I think he does a really good job.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to imagine Bob Parr as anyone else, but I definitely think this is one of the movies that John C. Reilly could come in and be the lead role and kill it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really have much more on this. That's just who I would want to see him play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I consider John C. for several roles in this movie. There were a couple that I've just, people that I couldn't get rid of. So Guff as a role I considered, but Wallace Shawn is perfect for that role, so I couldn't recast him.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go with Buddy Pine / Syndrome. So Jason Lee, get the hell out of here. John C. Reilly, come in and take his place. I just really want to see John C. in a villainous role. It'd just be really fun to me, especially this role. It's like the opposite of y'all's pick. So that would be a really fun to see either of those things with John C. as the hero or John C. as the villain. But yeah, Jason Lee's performance in this movie is fine, but I think John C. could bring a lot more to that role than Jason Lee is. Zombie apocalypse survival team. So Anya, your zombie apocalypse survival team is pretty sparse right now, so you got to kind of really make sure you make the right choice here to keep you safe. Who is your zombie apocalypse survival team choice?
Violet.
Oh. We're going to need that coin.
Uh-oh.
James, who do you have?
I do not have Violet.
That's good.
So we don't have to worry about a three-way tie. I have Jack.
Jack. Whoa, he takes a wild card.
So
seems like a lot of work.
It is. But he's the future.
I guess.
Look, a baby in the zombie apocalypse, definitely going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But this kid has potential. He's got who knows what powers.
This is James realizing he has ET on his team and being like, I gotta handicap my team a little bit. this isn't even fair otherwise, so I'll take the fucking baby.
I'm gonna take the baby. But basically that's it, man. Like we're kind of stacked, and I gotta stash this kid on the bench.
Yeah,
because he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And if we can just manage to keep him alive, look out.
Yeah, man. Sit him for about 2 years. Let him get some practice reps.
All right. I don't know if we ever grabbed that coin.
We did not. So James gets to keep his pick, but I hope you picked an alternate on you because we're going to have to flip for this choice. I do not have a coin, unfortunately, so we will have to rock, paper, scissors for it. You ready? So we'll go rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Cool? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Oh.
All right, and I get Violet. Who is your alternate, Anya?
Frozone.
Frozone? Why'd you pick Frozone as your alternate?
Because I like his powers, and he can help you like a lot because if anything's coming your way, like any liquid, he can just freeze it.
Yeah. Yeah, I picked Violet because she is, I think, the most invaluable character in this movie in a zombie apocalypse scenario, because she can literally just put a shield around you. Whatever you're staring down, bam, shield, we're good. And apparently it works as like a hamster ball.
Yeah.
So you just walk around in the hamster ball and you're good, like nothing to worry about. As long as she can keep up her concentration, you are fine. So, Violet, stand over there in the corner, projecting force fields. We will feed you graham crackers or something. And everybody's safe all the time. Nothing to worry about. My alternate one, I picked two alternates just in case we ran into multiple ties here, was Helen, aka Elastigirl.
That was my alternate.
Yeah, I mean, just a great power set. Very versatile. She can be a boat. She can be a parachute. She can do a lot for you. She can reach things that you wouldn't be able to reach otherwise. So yeah, Helen's definitely a good character. And then my second alternate was Frozone. So basically, aside from our first picks, we all had the same few picks there. That just leaves our last category, MVP. Anya, who was your MVP in this movie?
Violet.
Violet? Why is Violet your MVP?
Because of her confidence and how much she's grown over the whole entire movie.
It's a pretty good reason. James, who do you have for MVP?
I went with Brad Bird. I don't know that anyone worked harder than he did or put in the effort that he did to make this movie what it was.
Yeah.
That is simply my answer, down from directing, writing, acting, everything you mentioned in the beginning about how he just does not make concessions.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a movie without him.
No, absolutely not. I also have Brad Bird. This is his vision. This is a very personal story for him. A lot of the family dynamic was inspired. There are literal things in this movie. The 4th to 5th grade graduation ceremony. That's a literal thing from his movie. He and his wife argued about that made it into this movie.
Yeah.
So Brad Bird is genius, gets thrown around a lot, but I don't think there are many directors of animated movies who are better at using the genre to tell the story that they want to tell in the manner that they mean to tell it. Like you said, uncompromising. He understands his vision and knows what it's going to take to make it happen.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't know what it takes in a literal sense, he understands what the vision is well enough to get the desired result. And again, without compromise, we're talking not just this movie, Ratatouille, The Iron Giant. These are classics of animation, and I have a lot of respect for Brad Bird as a director, as a writer, as a storyteller, and just I don't know how this movie gets made without him steering that ship. So props to him. Anything else anybody wants to add about The Incredibles?
I don't know. I don't think so. Anya, you got anything?
No.
No?
Well, that's a podcast then, I guess.
That's a podcast.
Anya, thanks for joining us today for this episode. We look forward to maybe having you again in the future. In the meantime, you guys can find us on YouTube, Must Have Missed It, on TikTok, Must Have Missed It, social media. We are on Twitter at Must Have Missed It, on Instagram at Must Have Missed It.
Yep.
Send us emails.
All of them.
Musthavemissedit@gmail.com. Join the Discord. subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or both, or neither if you get them elsewhere, but only if you get them elsewhere. It's the only time you get to subscribe on neither of those is if you're getting it elsewhere.
You guys following this?
Yeah, it's getting a little convoluted. I apologize. We appreciate everybody for watching. We appreciate everybody for listening. We will join you next time. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New